This evening, I exhort you to lay aside every weight and run the race that is set before you. God exhorts us in Hebrews 12:1, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us." This evening, I want to focus on that phrase, "Let us also lay aside every weight." The author of Hebrews says, "Let us also lay aside every weight." In the chapter before, the author of Hebrews went through what some have called the Hall of Faith, where God chronicles the triumphs of this great cloud of witnesses that surrounds us, like Abel, Enoch, Noah, Abraham, and many others, who through faith conquered kingdoms, enforced justice, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, and so on. And now, God exhorts us to also do as they did, in laying aside every weight and running the race that is set before us, fixing our eyes on Jesus. In Pastor Tom's sermon 2 weeks ago, he helped us to understand in particular what that race set before each one of us might be. And this evening, I exhort you to lay aside every weight or burden that might be keeping you from running that race with endurance. Pay attention to the fact that God says to lay aside every weight and sin, which clings closely. Certainly sin is a weight and a burden that keeps us from running, but maybe there are things in our lives that are not necessarily sinful, but for us personally might tempt us to sin and keep us from running as fast or as hard as we could be. These things are not sinful in themselves, these weights, but they become weights when our hearts cling to the ease, distraction, and self-importance they might offer. So here, God exhorts us to lay them aside, like an athlete who takes off his robe before a race. An Olympic sprinter probably won't run in baggy clothing and pockets full of keys jangling around. So we ought to do the same, since the race that Christ has run before us and now has given us to run is far more important, and the reward much more glorious than an Olympic gold medal. Maybe you can think of something in your life that's not necessarily wrong or sinful, but functions as a weight or a burden. Maybe it's a certain app on your phone that's not necessarily sinful in itself, but might tempt you to be lazy or waste time. Lay it aside. Maybe you have a habit of always filling your silence with music or audiobooks or podcasts, which are great and good things in their proper place, but might leave you no room for prayer and meditation and honest self-examination before the Lord. Lay it aside. Men, maybe you feel a reluctance to change your family culture, not necessarily because you fear man, but because you desire peace and comfort in your home. And if that reluctance functions like a weight that keeps you from taking steps to reform your household to be more faithfully honoring to the Lord, then lay it aside. Whatever weight might be in your life, ask God to convict you about it and lay it aside. So, as we strive to take up the charge to rebuild Christian civilization and to make disciples who glorify God in all of life for all of Stillwater, I exhort you, lay aside every weight and run the race that is set before you.